Hello and welcome to Daily Politics, reaching you from Trust TV here in Abuja. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy, and governance. My name is Suleiman. Yesterday, Transparency International, or TI, as it is more well known, released a report of its 2021 Corruption Perception Index, CPI. In the report, TI says that corruption in Nigeria has gotten worse. Out of over 180 countries in the study, Nigeria ranked 154th, dropping 5 places from last year. Anti-graft agencies like the EFCC and ICPC always report mind-boggling cases of corruption, always in Nigeria. For example, in November last year, the ICPC reported that a single civil servant in this country stole or had or accumulated over 300 houses in Abuja. One wonders how a salary earner can earn that much. But then again, the EFCC also always says that it has convicted thousands of people or hundreds of people every year. Both of these things ought to create the impression that our anti-corruption agencies are working or that corruption in Nigeria is going down. But somehow it appears that these are not reflected in the work that the TI does. So the Nigerian government and the anti-corruption agencies always accuse the CPI that it is biased, that its methods are insensitive to what they have been doing, and so on and so forth. So today we're asking, who is winning the battle for survival between Nigeria and corruption? Will Nigeria kill corruption, or will corruption kill Nigeria, as you know more than me who used to say that? What does this latest report mean for Nigeria's anti-corruption campaign? And why should we even care what the CPI says about corruption in Nigeria, or not? We will find answers to all of these with my guests. I have with me Malam Umar Yakubu, who is the Executive Director of the Center for Fiscal Transparency and Integrity Watch. And also with me is Mr. Samuel Oyimafu Asimi, who is the Program Officer Anti-Corruption and Democratic Governance with CISLAC. Mr. Asimi is also a certified anti-money laundering specialist. Welcome to Daily Politics, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. But before we delve into the program proper, we'll take just a minute of a break, and then when we return, we'll continue. Welcome back. This is Daily Politics, and we're talking about Nigeria's latest ranking on the Corruption Perception Index. As you know, I usually start from my right, and then I end from my left. So every year, since at least 1999, and because the CPI itself started collecting data in 1998, since that time, almost, Nigeria has been among the top countries that have been, tagged. Nothing has changed. What does that say about Nigeria, or say about the Transparency International itself?
Well, the Transparency International is a very good organization that promotes good governance all over the world. Yeah, but there has been several criticisms about their methodology. Okay. And it's perception-based. And when you say perception, is what people feel. But you could argue, how come those countries that are doing well are continuously doing well, while we were not been doing so well, at least even when they changed the methodology from 2012 till date. We have never scored more than 25 Okay, the highest was 26 over 100, which is very bad in all ramifications. So it's quite unfortunate that we're scoring so low, but I think we need to critique, and all the assessments from different global corruption barometer, our own transparency and integrity index, were all scoring low. But for the TI, it's important to interrogate the methodology. Yeah, they source their information from 13 sources, and out of those 13, you find out about 11 to 12 are external, are mostly perception based. So that is why there's always, they leave room for people to reject the outcome of the results. So it's a very good methodology, it's fine, but it's perception based. That's why I think a few years ago, the ICPC, through Professor Bolaji, was trying to develop something, Corruption Experience Index. The NODC, too, on their own part, started developing things that, how have you experienced corruption? And even in other levels, your experience with the policemen in the judiciary, when you have access to hospitals, what kind of corruption do you experience? So these are the issues. So like I said earlier on, it's unfortunate we are not doing so well again, but it's important as well to look at other sets of parameters to see whether we're doing well in some areas and bad in some areas.
Thank you very much. Mr. Samuel, it's your organization that is the local partner to Transparency International. So it is you people that released this data in the first place. So what does it say about corruption in Nigeria? And how should the average Nigerian, receive this report?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. So I think generally we have to accept that there is much work to be done.
Okay.
And just to also maybe further just establish that TI has actually been conducting the CPI since 1995, and we've had different highs and lows. Like my colleague rightly mentioned, we've changed the methodology in 2012, and I think that's important because we understand these issues are dynamic, you understand? So we changed the methodology, of course, to accommodate more recent issues. And since we've changed the methodology, so Nigeria has oscillated between different points. In 2013, we had lows of 25 over 100. In 2016, we had high of 28 over 100. And I think that was actually the highest. Then Nigeria dropped this year to 24, which is the lowest. So just to set the record straight that there have been highs, there have been lows. Now, when you look at statistics, there are different ways of actually conducting surveys. So you have the perception, you have the experience, different ones, and they are all fine. We at Transparency International, we put our methodologies into test. We give it for auditors to conduct. So in 2012, after we set up the methodology, we gave it to the European Center for Joint Research, and in 2017, we still repeated this to them. And they find out that it was sound, it has a balanced structure, and it's actually statistically nice. So this was the result of the audit which we conducted. So I think...
But with all of that test, one of the criticisms against the CPI methodology is that it responds to media coverage, to scandals in the news, than to act, because it's based on perception. So, and in Nigeria, you're always having news about corruption in the newspapers. Some of them may not even have any credibility, So the CPI index has been accused of responding more to this kind of issues because it's based on perception, rather than the reality of corruption in the country. How do you respond?
Yes, so I was actually trying to establish some ground facts before we delve into it. So the CPI actually makes use of sources, credible sources. So for the CPI of 2021, 8 sources were used. And these are the same sources that were used for 2020. Okay. Now, these sources are credible sources. You have the World Bank, which is there. You have the Bertelsmann Foundation Transformation Index. You have the World Economic Forum. You have the Economic Intelligence Unit, the World Justice Rule of Law Project. These are credible organizations. And interestingly, Nigeria actually even gets loans from, for example, the World Bank. Good. So it's important to establish these facts because TI actually gets data from these 8 sources for the 2021 CPI. What we do, we get this source data on issues of corruption, bribery, and these individuals actually interview country experts and business people that do business in Nigeria. I think it's important to establish this to also maybe get all these things nice. So what we do is, after getting these sources from each of them, we standardize them, because some measure 0 to 7, 0 to 100, of course, statistics. And after standardizing, we get the average. Good. So it's important to get this background. So it doesn't really, like you would say, just respond to media. I mean, of course, those are issues, but it doesn't. But I think away from the methodology, and I think that's important. Like,
but let me bring Amali.
All right, that's
get to speak on that now. That's what he is saying as strength of the CPI is precisely what others call a weakness of the CPI, in the sense that all the sources that he mentioned, the Bertelsmann, the World Law Project, you know, the World Bank and so on, other than the African Development Bank, you know, which is slightly local, you can say, because it's still
Africa.
Almost all of them are external, you know, using experts that are non-Nigerian, business people who come to do business in Nigeria, you know, people who, country experts, people who have the vaguest, you know, understanding of the Nigerian environment, unlike, say, Nigerian experts, you know, who themselves can measure corruption, who themselves can understand corruption. For example, our own journalists, rather than foreign correspondents, you know, or, for example, our own academia, rather than foreign scholars, and so on and so forth. That's one of the, what he calls strength for the CPI is, in fact, one of the major criticisms against it. Is it a valid criticism?
Well, it depends on how you look at it. You see, TI tends to look at public sector corruption. And one of the major components of public sector corruption is interface between public servants and business people. And what usually happens, bribery, kickbacks, front backs, or whatever you want to call it. Now, they have a bias for that area. Like he said, under research, that is fine. But I have a bias, let's say, for the UNODC model. Because you see, the UNODC will look at your legal framework. They will look at your institutional framework. What laws do you have to start with that you even, are they sufficient enough to fight corruption? They will now cascade down, how strong are your institutions to fighting different types of corruption? Because you have illicit financial flows, you have money laundering, you have financial crimes and economic crimes, and so many other crimes. So that methodology is fine in its own sense, because it's coming externally, people that are doing business with Nigerians from that perspective. And if you even look at all the other indexes, there's none that were doing well anyway. So it's all about just different methodologies and different approaches to fighting corruption. So most of the questions they ask is businessmen, bribery. Where do they go to? Most likely, Nigeria is a mono economy, so they are likely going to go to the oil sector. I'm just giving an example. What do you expect? Highly likely that there will be corruption, but there are other areas that are much more sanitized. So it's basically not broad enough to cover aspects of corruption. That's why I want to refer my colleague to the UNODC survey that they did, where they picked different sectors.
Survey?
Yes, where they picked different sectors and really analyzed that, really brought out the real experience. Where you have experienced corruption, not what you think based on the newspapers or media people.
But that's part of the problem, isn't it? Because the UNDC framework looks at corruption that people can actually experience.
Yes, sir.
Not all corruption can be experienced directly by ordinary citizens like you and me. For example, okay, you want to...
let me jump in. And I still want to set the records straight,
Go ahead,
just to get the facts right. So this institutions, the World Bank country policy, we have the World Bank in Abuja, just to be clear.
Of course.
And we work with the World Bank, you understand? Some of these people being interviewed, not all are foreigners. I think it's important because you have Nigerian business people, one. You also have Nigerian country experts, two. It's important we have that established. To also add, I understand the UNODC bribery survey. In fact, Sislak was a member of the technical committee and steering committee. I personally was in Katsina State to actually supervise the data collection as part of their quality control mechanisms. It's actually fantastic. It's a good idea. Now, if you look at what that does, it looks at the experience of citizens on bribery. It stops there.
Yes.
Now, you have bribery is just one aspect of corruption. So you have state capture, you have nepotism and other things. Do you understand? So now, moving further to that, if you look at the UNODC survey, so you measure household survey. That was a household survey because I actually went to the States with MBS. We actually conducted it through CAPI, that's computer-aided devices.
Yes.
Good. So that's a household survey, and you look at the bribery, just only bribery. Now, the TI Corruption Perception Index, we use these 8 sources. I just to be clear, because we get this state each time that they're just external. So some of these.
But the problem is this: it's not just the method, but the outcome of the method. Because, for example, in the last 10, 12 years since the change of the method in 2012.
Yes, please.
Nigeria's average score on the CPI has hovered around 26. Between, you understand, 25 and 28.
We've had highs of 28. We've had lows of 24.
Hovered around.
Absolutely.
Around 26. So 28 highest. And then within that range, the average is generally 26. Even this year's, I don't think that would have changed anything any significantly. So that's one of the problems that people say, that the countries that have already done well on the CPI index continue to do well on the CPI index, regardless of internal changes within these countries. And those countries that do poorly continue to do poorly on the CPI index, regardless of internal changes within these countries. For example, in countries like Britain, in the last 2-3 years, you are hearing of cases of sleaze, within the governing party, within the number 10 Downing Street, and so on and so forth. People expect that should, to some extent, reflect on the CPI. It never does. And then you have countries like I wouldn't say Nigeria, because I don't know how serious people actually are about fighting corruption here, but at least you have institutions that are trying, that are making efforts, and so on. And things remain the same. So what method, fixes outcomes if it is scientific?
I like that you raised these points, and I think it's important we tell ourselves the truth. In some of the courses we do as anti-corruption experts, we get told that you don't just pick a survey or an index alone, you also compare it with others. I think that's very, very important. So if you look at the NY polls, the corruption barometer, which was released last year, Nigeria actually declined. If you look at the World Freedom Index, Nigeria actually declined.
But they use the same data. That's why they fit into each other. They use the same data.
No, they don't. You're getting
they use the same data.
You're getting it mixed up.
Believe me.
You're getting it mixed up.
The 13 sources that he mentioned that the CPI used is the same that these other ones used. Some of them.
No, this is the challenge. And this is the challenge, because we had colleagues who come to this. So the corruption barometer is different. So that measures citizens' experience of corruption.
That's the largest, yes.
That's the largest, you get, collection of data on corruption. And if you check it, the corruption barometer, it's actually showing the same indication. This doesn't even come from the CPI, that's one. Two, the World Freedom Index, this doesn't come from the CPI, Nigeria is declining. World Press Freedom Index, this doesn't come from the CPI, Nigeria is declining. So we either tell ourselves the truth, you get, if you look at all the surveys. If you look at the Civicus monitor, Nigeria is a restricted space, you understand, for human rights activists, anti-corruption experts, and the rest. If you look at all these indexes,
but the argument is general.
Can I finish my point, please? Thank you very much.
Please.
So if you look at all these indexes, there is a decline on all of them. We should ask ourselves, and I think that's the important question. There is no finger pointing. If you look at our press statement we released yesterday, we actually made it clear that this is not actually an indictment of the anti-graft agencies. We know the efforts they put in within the environments they work. This was actually stated clearly. So we are not saying EFCC, ICPC, whatever, you're not doing well. Like, this is not just an assessment of them. You understand? So you're looking at corruption as a whole. And interestingly, the Nigerian government actually set up a committee in March last year to review Nigeria's performance on the CPI in 2020. And we received the report in October last year, and we reviewed it. We felt that was a good step because it shows they are moving. And we think further down, and we're actually willing to we are citizens, of this country. You understand? We don't have any other country. Nigeria is us. So we are willing to actually work with whoever is ready, and we actually have this engagement. So I think it's important, just to wrap up.
Let me bring, because
I think it's
we're too...
Okay.
This is where the whole discussion is going. That, if people are saying because CPI is largely external to the country, is barely based, although international and so on, has local partners and so on. Maybe what we need, like you said, what we need is, because the whole thing is about measuring corruption, so that if you can measure something, then you can, increase it or reduce it, as the case may be. You cannot solve a problem that you cannot measure. That's the entire thing, the essence of CPI. So the people are saying that we should grow locally sensitive and yet theoretically and quantitatively sound measures, such as the one that your organization released last year. How is it different from CPI, and how does it, help us to answer the measurement questions that we have against the CPI?
Okay, thank you, sir. Like I said earlier on, all these surveys are out to promote good governance, all of them. And all of them have their uses. I think why the CPI has a problem is a nomenclature problem. You don't say you're measuring corruption for the layman. You have said corruption perception index. You have told him his country, a loyal citizen, is number 20, scored 24 out of 100. Then when you now go and check the methodology, you see issues about your level of human rights, your level of your civic space, your level of so many other issues that are not everybody understand are tied to corruption.
Yes.
So I think it's a nomenclature issue. That's why there's always resistance from the government. If you are calling a good governance index, it will actually fit better. And that is why you find out countries that have very strong democracies, 200-year-old countries, 250, 150-year-old countries, are always high. The Scandinavian countries, Denmark, Norway, they're always high because their civic space is open, their democracies are strong.
While all the are available.
While the African countries are always scoring low because of those parameters that they put, that weak economies, weak democracies, and weak political institutions we don't have. There's a criteria the index has about strength of institutions. The length, research has shown the longer your years of democracy, the more likely your institutions are going to be strong. So when is Africa going to catch up? So these are just the criticisms.
When Nigeria is 20 years against US with 250
years. plus years. So these are just the issues. So like he said again, the UN 1-2 is looking at bribery and your interface with those agencies. You did the police and with the hospital. Ours too looked at transparency, because one of the pillars of strong democracies is transparency and openness. That's why you have the OGP, the Open Government Partnerships, where if there is no secrecy, open up everything. Let there be civic engagement to what government is doing. Apart from the security issues, open up everything. Let us know. If you ask an average person on the street, okay, what's the budget of your local government? He doesn't even know. How much has been spent on capital versus recurrent? Most people don't know.
And the governments too, the local governments too, don't provide that information to citizens.
That is very true. The state governments do not. They just give you what you want to give. People do not interrogate the budget. So it's part of the problem. So what we try to do is to promote advocacy towards making government more open. If you have nothing to hide, anyway, the money is ours, it belongs to everybody. Make it more open, and where we develop those criteria of 5 variables, 31 sub-variables that ordinarily should be in the public space.
Thank you. So despite the criticisms of CPI, there is unanimous, agreement that, well, it has also advanced, discussions about corruption in a way that any organization has done. How has this worked for Nigeria in particular?
I think, like I mentioned earlier, sometimes we should do soul searching. Sometimes the truth might not be what we want. It might not be how we want it, but these things are out there. Just a quick one, you look at the Pandora's revelation, the Pandora Papers. On the continent, Nigeria actually topped the chart. We had at least 10 politically exposed persons mentioned.
And just for 200 million people.
And just for the records, it's important to stress that we are not saying those people are guilty or not, because that's for the courts to do. I think what citizens wanted at that point was just answers. like investigations, look into these issues and get us answers, and nothing was done. We got reports from the Auditor General, the audit report, the non-compliance of MDAs, which was published in November last year. You saw the reports. We had 9 agencies spending about 49 billion naira without appropriation against the Constitution. That's the challenge. You still saw on that report around arms and ammunition for the police. So we had about 178,000 arms and ammunition, close to 8,000 AK-47 plus pistols together, put together. That's enough to arm, say, a force of 25% of the Nigerian police. We had this.
It's enough to harm a whole country.
Good.
Some countries, yes, in Africa.
Good. And when you link this up with the cable, an output by the cable and the Council on Foreign Relations, the cable is a Nigerian-based listing. We had over 5,000 deaths related to security issues last year, and that's like 14 Nigerians dying daily. Once you connect the nexus between lack of accountability and lack of transparency, you see it actually reverberates and gives ripple effects around other sectors of the society. And this is where our message have been. These issues are out there. We need to address them. These issues actually, what do you expect when we saw the issues with the budget? I mean, the president actually said there were multiple issues, Good. We have budgets in Nigerian-based civil society organization
they're doing very well.
Flagged issues with budgets, duplicated projects. When you look at all this, I mean, these are integrity issues. These are transparency issues. And this is where the problems are. So you and I, this definitely would inform any index.
The CPI itself, in what way has it helped, and the TI itself as an organization, which you represent, and despite the criticism, because criticism doesn't mean you're not doing well. Sometimes criticisms actually mean you are doing very well. So the question is, in what ways, has the CPI and the TI and the Nigerian chapter, in what ways have you advanced these issues in the country? That was the original question.
That's very fine, and I think it's important. We also know that. So the role we play, interestingly, we get accolades, we get knocks at different times. So when different governments are in power, of course, they give knocks. When they are in the opposition,
then they give accolades.
Yes. You understand? In fact, once they leave
sometimes by the same people.
Absolutely. And I think this is very, very important. Yes. So from where I sit, we don't actually let these issues bug us because the goal is actually for a better Nigeria. And running to your point on how we do this and how we engage, we actually work with the anti-graft agencies very, very well. And this is not something we just have to come out to the media. As I speak to you with this out, like I've shared the methodology with lots of anti-graft agencies via WhatsApp, personal chats and the rest, and they actually go through it at different levels of government. You see the committee that was set up when we were reviewing it, they actually reached out to us for different data and different issues, and we actually shared with them. In terms of capacity building, in terms of conducting trainings, in terms of advocacy for different policies, laws and framework, we actually push for that.
Interesting.
From the proceeds of crime, whistleblower, on the Police Act itself, we actually push and canvass for these things. So what we do is we look at the weaknesses on these issues, we try to highlight them, and we try to work with these anti-graft agencies to ensure that these are done. So I think it's important because we push for this. And like I mentioned earlier, it's a normal routine when the CPI comes, so you get knocks, you get accolades, sometimes from these same people, and years after they still come back and tell you.
Thank you. So I think maybe this is where we transit into discussions about what has really been happening in terms of anti-corruption activity in Nigeria in the last 7 years or so. Because whether we like it or not, the whole idea of anti-corruption is the primary brand of President Muhammadu Buhari himself. There's no doubt. So maybe we can use this opportunity to review what the government has done. But that will be when we return from a minute break. We'll continue to have a look at what the government of President Muhammad Buhari has been doing or not been doing, which is also just as important about corruption and anti-corruption in Nigeria. Thank you for staying with us. Still stay with us. We'll be right back.
From all around the world,
our news is factual and concise,
giving you fresh news as it breaks.
Nigerians in the diaspora have decried the unavailability of Nigerian passport booklet.
One tricycle rider feared death while 6 others are critically injured after a moving train hit.
When I sit on the news desk every day,
there's a deep sense of responsibility that overwhelms me.
a responsibility to deliver a message to our viewers
in the most professional way possible. Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Daily Politics on Trust TV, and we're talking about corruption and anti-corruption in Nigeria following Transparency International's release of, yet again, Nigeria's performance on the Corruption Perception Index. With me, of course, is Malam Umar Yakubu and Mr. Samuel Osimi, both of them anti-corruption experts. So we continue.
Yes, sir.
So, sir, as we were saying during while the adverts were on during the break, the Buhari government is this is what most Nigerians voted for. In fact, they voted for an end to corruption, whether it was clearly stated how this was going to happen or not. That's what most people thought they were voting for. There was that belief that if we vote this government, it will lead to an end to corruption. So where are we with that idea now? Was it all a dream, or were we all mistaken? Where are we?
Well, okay, since you are giving history, the way he fought corruption in 1983 cannot be the same in 2015. Because then he was a military ruler and now it's a civilian democracy. But the thing is, other countries are doing well. Why are we not doing well? That is as simple as that. Why are we not doing well? My view on this is that you cannot use old methods to solve a current problem. The way corruption is evolving and moving and shifting, I think the agencies responsible are not catching up at that space, at that pace, and to stop it. For example, recent methodologies will tell you, as it has always been, you have to narrow down on, let's say, budget, procurement. If you look at these two and you spend your time there on preventive measures, not when it has happened, under procurement and budget, you solve 70 and 80% of the problem. Because these are where the areas where discretion comes in. This is 1 million naira, you make it 10 million naira. And this is where you decide, okay, I'm giving Mr. A instead of Mr. B. This is where you disqualify people that have actually qualified to do the job, where merit does not come in, where discretion comes in. So when you do things around this space, that is where I think you actually prevent corruption. But we're still working on the thing has already happened. When it has happened, you want to arrest, take him to court, spend so much money, so much resources, and in the courts you spend 10, 15 years. It can actually be frustrating, I'm sure, for the law enforcement agency. So my view is a change in methodology where we focus more on preventive measures and narrow down to areas where the hotspots are, which are budget and procurement. If you look at this area, this is where the money is filtered out.
Thank you. Mr. Asimi, where are we with the anti-corruption mantra of this government? Are we there? Are we getting there?
Yeah, so I think my colleague has actually set the tone, and I think I'm happy to talk less since it's not the CPI methodology, but, just to further respond to that. I think the truth must be told, we had lots of expectations, and these expectations are not met. In other words, the results have not been commensurate with the efforts and the lip service we've had within this. There is room for improvement. The anti-graft agencies need to do more in terms of convicting politically exposed persons, high-profile issues. We need to work on that. Aside the budget point which my colleague pointed, which is very, very nice, and for them to also not just be corrective, but also preventive, like he also mentioned. And I think also in the area of, say, maybe asset...
So people would say that the budget under this government has not really been different from budgets under any other government in Nigeria. And why is that? Is it true, and why is that?
You made a point in your introduction of this session that whether this government states it or not, it was coming with the mantra to fight corruption.
Yes.
So I think it's important because that's actually what citizens would actually hold. You understand? So while we can actually compare with others for statistical purposes, but citizens actually voted for something different in order for the president as well. Like they needed a new vision, a new Nigeria. Yeah, good. That was why that was. And looking at that generally, the efforts have not been commensurate with the result, like I mentioned. I was about giving a quick example in terms of just say maybe asset recovery. There is actually not much harmony in terms of all the agencies with asset recovery. So you have different agencies recovering assets, but you can't actually point to where these assets are and all these issues. So I think that's in itself is also a challenge. So there are lots of other areas in terms of frameworks, legal frameworks that we could actually use, say whistleblowing, getting the Proceeds of Crime Management Act in place, say having something that protects whistleblowers. So these are key legislations that we need to
the
put in place.
whistleblowing policy is in fact part of a suite of policies, administrative policies that are domesticated, in various agencies of government, not necessarily even the anti-corruption agencies, like the TSA, the IPs,
IPPIs,
and BVN and so on. All of these ones were said to, in a way, will help to block leakages. I remember President Buhari speaking at Chatham House, in 2015, just before the elections, that these are the things that he aimed would block leakages. To what extent have they blocked these leakages, even 7 years after?
Okay, they have done the TSC, which is where all funds will go into one central bank account. So it's a way of blocking leakages, if we must accept it. Yes, it has reduced. It has had some impact because it has increased the level of accountability. Instead of where, let's say, tax is generated and nobody knows how much has been generated, so at least you know where the pool has come. Now, where that is good, but now from that pool they distribute. That is where the corruption takes place now.
Exactly.
This can be bought for, say, 10 million naira. Now, what has been done in that aspect? So the collection aspect is fine because of the TSC. Now, the distribution aspect, has the corruption been blocked at that stage? That is where mostly.
And that's the problem with the TSA right from its conception. They weren't thinking, okay, even if the government takes in all the monies in one account, the government is not just taking in, it's not only a receiver, it's also a giver. And there can be corruption in both receiving and in giving, and that. So what about the other issues that the people expected in terms of rates of conviction? Every year you see that the EFCC would say that, particularly since Magu, they would say that the number of their convictions have increased. But if you look at it with a clear eye, you see that it is only Yahoo boys and 419 people, or crimes that would otherwise not even be called corruption because they don't involve public office in the first instance. You understand, that are convicted, like an ordinary person duping another ordinary person. These are crimes, and they occur in almost all human societies, and people don't call them corruption per se, even though, of course, you can say. So why is it so? Where are we in terms of convicting the real public office holders who got rich through corruption?
Yes, this is a very good question, and it's an issue because, like you mentioned, we don't see politically exposed persons, high-profile cases of corruption. We don't really see them convicted. Oftentimes, in fact, we actually watch them switch political affiliations, and with the elections coming, maybe we don't see a couple of that. But the challenge remains that there's a lot to do. And this is not just resting with the executive, and I think this was what we stressed when we're releasing the CPI. Of course, the judiciary also has its part to play because, I mean, these anti-graft agencies they also have their own parts to play. So in terms of having thorough investigation, thorough prosecutions, you don't come with a 50-count charge and get all dismissed. Rather, you focus on if it's 3, 2, you can really, really defend and work on. That's actually very fine. And with the courts as well, it's important that the judges they actually also work on this, because we know these politically exposed persons of course, they have the war chest to actually fund senior lawyers and actually elongate these trial processes. But then I think our anti-graft agencies can actually be a bit more smarter in this approach. And like he said, they should actually cope full on with these things and be dynamic. I mean, they are doing well with the conditions they are finding themselves in terms of the political interference and other things. They're actually doing well.
Is there really a political interference?
Oh, well, generally, just a quick, if you find politically exposed persons not being convicted, if you find politically exposed persons switching political affiliations and them maybe not really being followed through or cases being slowed down, then definitely, you know, things are wrong and something is going on somewhere.
The government would also say, well, this is the first time that you've had governors convicted for 10, 14-year terms, many of them former governors, many of them actually serving term in prison terms even as we speak now. The government can say this, that is an indication that they are actually doing something. Should we believe it, the government, when they say that?
Well, like I said earlier on, I'm not of the view of correctional measures prosecution, because if you actually do a research on the time and resources spent in convicting one governor of, let's say, 2-3 billion naira, you actually find out he may not have gained much, but it would be nice for the news.
Maybe up to that 2 or 3 billion or more.
And the resources, and to make nice news headlines, oh, Governor X has been convicted, and everybody will be clapping. I think they have done well. But people will not look at maybe $50 billion would have left the country through illicit financial flows. That for me is more dangerous, because you have removed money out of the economy, taking it to develop another economy that should have been in Nigeria. So what all agencies need to do, and all over the world, before I go to that point, is so difficult to convict politically exposed persons.
Absolutely.
Even in strong democracies, as where they have strong rule of law mechanisms to convict anybody, it takes longer. In the long run, if the law might catch up, but it takes longer. So why not, we're in 2022, please, why not apply strong preventive measures where it does not even occur? And these things, with the aid of technology, with the aid of opening the civic space on the budget and procurement, these monies will not even be taken in the first place. And it saves you a lot of time, and it's cheaper for everybody, and there's law, so the issue of political exposed person will not even come up in the first place. This is my honest view.
Thank you very much. And some people are saying that, well, even Nigerians want their government to bring an end to corruption. Nigerians want corrupt people in government convicted and sent to prison and so on. But they too are not really better, that you have corruption in society as much as you have corruption in government. You know, your tailor, your mechanic, you know, your security person, your teacher, everyone is looking for ways to take what does not necessarily belong to them, you know, in ways that can be described as corrupt. You know, doctors, teachers, everyone is using the small power that they have to feather their own nests, you know. So what rights, if that is the case, what right do Nigerians have to even demand for good governance?
Yes, so you're going into an interesting angle within the anti-corruption sphere, where you look at social norms and values and how they actually drive corruption. And in the last decade, lots of researchers and experts have now been working around social norms to see if this can actually change, and political office holders being products of the societies. But I think this is almost given a free pass to those elected to public offices. Now, I say this because if you take someone in a place where the system works, for example, if laws are being held, if everybody is held to account for taking an action, then they won't actually do it. So if you find the country, say, maybe sitting number 1 on the CPI, and you get the citizen from there to come to the country, say, sitting at the end of the CPI, maybe say Sudan, South Sudan, the person will still behave in the way those people are behaving because of the systems in place. So
in Rome, you do as the Romans do.
Exactly. So this is why citizens elect public officials to maybe set these systems to prevent this. I mean, we all know there is a collective challenge. We know there is this challenge, so they should put it. Of course, the argument holds that social norms and values are there. For example, you have citizens putting pressure on maybe the elected legislators, say during festive period, expecting them to maybe bring rights and all these things, and all these are drivers to corruption. But then I think if you hold that view a lot, you might just give a pass to the public office holders who are elected to actually prevent those things and actually ensure those systems are in place to actually solve the issue of social norms and values.
Thank you. But these same elected officials can reply that if you come to their houses, you see a large number of people are waiting there to tell them that they need, their daughters are going to school, they've got admission, they've got hospital admissions, they want to marry, they want to name, they want to do and all this. And they know, these same people who do this, they know very well that these people they have to have the money has to come from somewhere. So they want to participate in it. The public officials can answer in return that this is also one way in which the society is organically connected to the state in relation to corruption. So would that be, would that be an answer to the position he's just taking, which is correct position? Yes.
Yeah, and this is one of the roots of our problem, the social structure we have in Nigeria, where you have made public office so lucrative. You know somebody that before he went into public office, you know what his income is.
He was using under 86.
Fine. Now, after 6 months or 9 months or 1 year maximum, his living standard has improved, quote and unquote, exponentially, way beyond reasonable. There's no way you can explain how somebody that was living in a 10 million naira house is now living in 200 million. His cars has improved. He has added more wives. He has added his circle of friends, things. And nobody is asking questions. So now that is why you find that now, unfortunately, even young people, 7, 8, 9-year-old, are looking at public office. Nobody wants to be a sportsman or an academic because they have seen it's lucrative. So that is why you have to discourage governance impunity, because the problem we have these days is more of impunity because it's just not explainable. And they don't ask questions. That is why you see during politics, like we're going to political season now, the spending triples. The dollar will continue rising because they need money to, and nobody is doing anything about it. And I'm not too much of a believer in too much advocacy. We just don't listen. Just cut off the means. Resources. Just cut it off where you apply measures where you will not even have access, because if you ask the law enforcement agencies, there is no caliber of people you have not seen in the acts of corruption. Young people, old people, women, children.
Even when you follow the news about corruption.
Everybody, the religious people, our leaders, the academics. You understand? So it's quite unfortunate. So what countries are doing, just cut off the means, because in the triangle of committing corruption is the opportunity. So once the opportunity is taken out, nobody will just commit it.
Interesting. Thank you very much. So we've just about come to the end of the show, but we still have 1 minute for you to, it's your right, since we started here, so it's in fact your right. Based on the current data that the CPI, what one thing or two things do you think this government can do to improve Nigeria's position vis-a-vis corruption over the next 18 months or over the next 1 year or so?
Yeah, so I think the first would be to block the leakages in terms of budgetary procurement, like he mentioned. Block the leakages where these illicit financial flows that cost Nigeria $18 billion annually, according to estimates. So you block them in the first point. The second point, I think it's now also to now improve investigations and prosecution of existing cases of corruption. So once you prevent and you now correct the existing ones, then things would actually be better.
Thank you very much. This is where we come to the end of today's program. Thank you very much, Maila Umar Yakubu.
Thank you
very much, Mr. Samuel Asimi, for coming over. We hope to have you on the show once more, because corruption is an unending issue in Nigeria. It's something that has always engage governments. In fact, virtually every government in the history of this country has campaigned in one way or other, even if the military governments, about ending corruption. And yet today we're still being ranked 154th out of 180 countries. That means we haven't really done much. But of course, we'll continue on this program to try and bring you more analysis of politics, policy and governance. Thank you for staying with us, and do join us again tomorrow when we bring you another edition of Daily Politics. My name is Suleiman Suleiman. Good night.